The evening of July 17th, 1996 was warm and hazy in New York. A typical summer night filled with the promise of travel and adventure. At John F. Kennedy International Airport, Trans World Airlines Flight 800, a Boeing 747-131, was preparing for its transatlantic journey to Paris. The aircraft, registered as 93,119, had a long and storied history, having been in service since 1971. On this fateful evening, 212 passengers and 18 crew members were on board, their minds set on the City of Light. The flight was delayed for over an hour, a minor annoyance that would later become a haunting detail in the timeline of the tragedy. Finally, at 8:19 p.m. ET, TWA Flight 800 was cleared for takeoff and began its powerful ascent into the darkening sky. The aircraft followed its assigned flight path, climbing steadily over the Atlantic Ocean, a silver giant against the twilight. Air traffic controllers monitored its progress, a routine procedure on a seemingly ordinary night. Just 12 minutes into the flight, at approximately 8:31 p.m., something went catastrophically wrong. Without any warning nor distress call from the cockpit, TWA Flight 800 vanished from radar screens. On the ground and in boats off the coast of Long Island, numerous people witnessed a horrifying spectacle. Reported seeing one or more streaks of light ascending towards the aircraft, followed by a massive fireball. The fireball split in two and descended towards the water in a fiery cascade, a sight that would be seared into their memories forever. The initial moments were filled with confusion and disbelief. The scale of the disaster was almost incomprehensible. The United States Coast Guard was immediately alerted, launching a massive search and rescue operation. Helicopters and boats converged on the area, their searchlights cutting through the darkness, hoping to find survivors. Tragically, it soon became clear that all 230 people on board had perished in the disaster. The immediate aftermath was a scene of chaos and heartbreak as the nation awoke to the devastating news. Given the eyewitness accounts of a streak of light, speculation of a missile strike or terrorist bomb began almost immediately. The FBI launched a criminal investigation, treating the crash site as a potential crime scene. The National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, began the painstaking process of recovering the wreckage from the ocean floor. Over the next several months, more than 95% of the aircraft was recovered, a monumental feat of engineering and determination. The recovered pieces were meticulously transported to a hangar in Calverton, New York. There, investigators began the daunting task of reconstructing the Boeing 747, piece by painful piece. The reconstruction aimed to provide a three-dimensional map of the damage and reveal the origin of the breakup. As the investigation progressed, the missile theory remained a prominent and fiercely debated topic in the public discourse. Proponents of this theory pointed to the hundreds of eyewitnesses who claimed to have seen a missile-like object. Some speculated it was a terrorist attack, a chilling prospect for a nation that felt largely immune to such events on its own soil. Others whispered of a friendly fire incident, suggesting the U.S. Navy, which was conducting exercises nearby, had accidentally shot down the airliner. This theory posited a massive government cover-up to conceal a catastrophic military error. The FBI, however, announced in November 1997 that its investigation had found no evidence of a criminal act. They concluded that no missile or bomb was involved in the destruction of TWA Flight 800. This left the NTSB to determine the cause of the accident, a task that would take 4 years to complete. The NTSB's investigation was one of the most extensive and expensive in aviation history. Investigators focused on the center wing fuel tank, a large, often near-empty cavity in the belly of the 747. They discovered that the air conditioning packs located directly beneath the tank generated a significant amount of heat. This heat could raise the temperature of the fuel vapor inside the center wing tank to a flammable level. The NTSB theorized that a spark of unknown origin had ignited this volatile fuel-air mixture. The resulting explosion would have been powerful enough to rupture the tank and tear the aircraft apart from the inside. The NTSB's final report, issued in August 2000, officially stated this as the probable cause of the accident. The report concluded that the structural failure of the aircraft was initiated by an explosion in the center wing fuel tank. The ignition source was most likely a short circuit in the fuel quantity indication system wiring that entered the tank. The NTSB also addressed the eyewitness accounts of a streak of light, offering a different explanation. They created a computer animation showing that after the initial explosion, the crippled aircraft, trailing burning fuel, continued to climb for several thousand feet. This, they argued, is what the witnesses saw and mistook for a missile ascending towards the plane. The subsequent breakup of the aircraft and the fall of burning debris created the illusion of a second explosion. Despite the official findings, many people, including some of the original investigators, remained unconvinced. They argued that the NTSB had dismissed compelling evidence that contradicted the fuel tank theory. A 2013 documentary brought these dissenting voices to the forefront, reigniting the public debate. The documentary featured former investigators who claimed the FBI had tampered with the investigation. They pointed to radar data that allegedly showed high-velocity debris being ejected from the aircraft, consistent with a missile strike. They also highlighted the presence of explosive residue found on some of the wreckage. The NTSB countered these claims, stating that the residue was likely cross-contamination from a bomb-sniffing dog training exercise conducted on the aircraft weeks before the crash. The NTSB also reanalyzed the radar data and maintained that it did not support the missile theory. The debate over TWA Flight 800 has become a classic example of a conspiracy theory that refuses to die. It pits the meticulous, science-based conclusions of a government agency against the compelling, but often anecdotal, evidence of eyewitnesses. The official explanation requires understanding complex engineering principles and a chain of unfortunate events. The missile theory, in contrast, offers a simpler, more dramatic, and for some, more believable narrative. The tragedy of TWA Flight 800 led to significant safety improvements in the aviation industry. The FAA mandated changes to reduce the flammability of fuel tanks, including the installation of nitrogen-inerting systems. These changes have undoubtedly made air travel safer, a lasting legacy born from a terrible loss. For the families of the victims, the lingering questions and conspiracy theories have only compounded their grief. They are left to mourn their loved ones amidst a cloud of uncertainty and public debate. The reconstructed fuselage of TWA Flight 800 was used as a training tool for accident investigators for many years. In 2021, the NTSB decommissioned the reconstruction, citing the advent of new 3D scanning and imaging technologies. The wreckage was carefully and respectfully dismantled, with the family's wishes taken into account. The story of TWA Flight 800 remains a cautionary tale about the complexities of accident investigation. It highlights the difficulty of finding definitive answers in the face of catastrophic failure. The hidden truth, whether it lies in a faulty wire or a government cover-up, may never be universally accepted. The crash of TWA Flight 800 is a scar on the history of aviation. A tragedy that continues to fascinate and horrify. The official report points to a mechanical failure, a conclusion reached after years of meticulous work. Yet, the specter of a missile, fueled by eyewitness accounts, haunts the official narrative. The investigation involved sifting through millions of pieces of debris scattered across the ocean floor. Each piece was a clue, a silent witness to the aircraft's final moments. Among the passengers were students, artists, business people, and families on vacation. The flight was particularly popular with French citizens and Americans traveling to France. The loss was felt deeply on both sides of the Atlantic, a shared moment of international grief. The theory of a bomb was also thoroughly investigated by the FBI. No evidence of a bomb, such as a crater or pitting characteristic of a high explosive device, was found on the wreckage. This lack of physical evidence was a key factor in the FBI's decision to rule out a criminal act. NTSB's focus on the center wing tank was driven by the pattern of the wreckage. The reconstruction showed that the aircraft broke apart around this central point. The 747-100 series was known to have issues with heat buildup in the center wing tank. However, before TWA 800, this had never resulted in a catastrophic explosion on a 747. The NTSB's challenge was to find the specific ignition source that triggered the disaster. They examined miles of wiring recovered from the wreckage, looking for any sign of a short circuit. Fuel quantity indication system was a prime suspect because its wiring ran directly into the fuel tank. A short circuit could have sent a high voltage surge into the tank, creating a deadly spark. While a definitive smoking gun wire was never found, the circumstantial evidence was strong. The missile theory proponents, however, argue that the NTSB's explanation is too convenient. They believe the government had a vested interest in avoiding a missile scenario, especially if it was friendly fire. A friendly fire incident would have been a political and military catastrophe. The debate has often been acrimonious, with accusations of incompetence and bad faith on both sides. The families of the victims have been caught in the middle of this contentious debate. Some families have accepted the NTSB's findings, finding closure in the mechanical failure explanation. Others remain convinced that the truth has been hidden from them and continue to fight for answers. The internet played a significant role in the spread of conspiracy theories surrounding TWA 800. It was one of the first major news events where online communities could dissect and debate evidence in real time. This created an echo chamber for alternative theories, allowing them to gain traction outside of mainstream media. The legacy of TWA Flight 800 is, therefore, twofold: a story of improved aviation safety and a story of enduring public mistrust. Physical evidence, as analyzed by the NTSB, points overwhelmingly to a mechanical accident. The testimonial evidence, from hundreds of people on the ground, suggests an external event. Reconciling these two conflicting sets of evidence is the central challenge of the TWA 800 case. The NTSB's explanation for the streak of light, while plausible, has not satisfied everyone. The idea that a crippled 747 could climb several thousand feet seems counterintuitive to many. However, the laws of physics and aerodynamics support the possibility of such a zoom climb. The aircraft, traveling at high speed, would have had enormous momentum, carrying it upward even after the explosion. The controversy also highlights the fallibility of eyewitness testimony, especially in traumatic situations. The human brain often tries to make sense of chaotic events by fitting them into familiar narratives. A missile is a simple, understandable explanation for a sudden explosion in the sky. A complex sequence of electrical faults and fuel-air mixture explosions is much harder to grasp. Ultimately, the search for truth in the TWA 800 case is a journey into the heart of a modern tragedy. It is a story of loss, of science, and of the enduring power of doubt. The final chapter of the physical investigation closed with the decommissioning of the wreckage. But the debate in the public mind is likely to continue for many years to come. The truth, for many, remains hidden in the dark waters of the Atlantic, just off the coast of Long Island. The crash prompted a re-evaluation of aircraft wiring standards across the industry. Investigators found that aging wiring could become brittle and cracked, increasing the risk of short circuits. This led to new regulations requiring more stringent inspections and maintenance of aircraft wiring. The TWA 800 investigation served as a wake-up call about the potential dangers of aging aircraft. The victims of Flight 800 are honored at a memorial in Smith Point County Park on Long Island. The memorial lists the names of all 230 people who were lost in the tragedy. It provides a place of solace and remembrance for the families and the public. The question of missile or accident has become a permanent part of the TWA 800 story. It reflects a broader societal tension between official explanations and public skepticism. The NTSB stands by its findings, confident in the scientific process that led to them. The critics, however, maintain that key evidence was ignored or misinterpreted. The truth may be that the event was a perfect storm of mechanical vulnerability and bad luck. A series of small, individually unlikely events that aligned to create a catastrophe. This explanation, while scientifically sound, lacks the narrative punch of a conspiracy. And so, the story endures, a mystery written in fire across the night sky. The flight data recorder and cockpit voice recorder were recovered from the ocean floor. The cockpit voice recorder captured a brief, unidentified noise just before it stopped recording. This sound was consistent with the sound of the aircraft beginning to break apart. There were no words from the pilots indicating they were aware of any missile or external threat. This lack of a verbal report from the highly experienced crew is significant. The flight data recorder showed the aircraft operating normally until the moment of the event. There were no evasive maneuvers or sudden changes in course. This data supports the theory of a sudden, internal event, rather than an external attack that might have been seen by the pilots. The mystery of TWA 800 is not just about what happened, but about what we choose to believe. It is a reflection of our relationship with technology, authority, and the unknown. The crash of TWA Flight 800 will forever be a somber reminder of the fragility of life and the fallibility of our creations.